Another one that is like his. It's urban research and design. It's a history course in the history department in the upper school, and students are given a part of the Pittsburgh community to sort of figure out how to redevelop, and so that is very much of a project-based course too. We have elements of project-based learning in many classes.
Okay, cool.
From some in the lower school, a lot in the middle school, and some more in the upper school, but we don't have any other full courses to the degree that those two are.
Interesting. You mentioned that you have the project-based elements across from lower schools to upper school. But are there any differences in executing, implementing these courses in these three different
absolutely,
schools?
depending on the developmental age of the student.
Yeah.
So as an example, in a second grade class, they study the community and what makes up a community, and how different elements of a community impact each other. So they design, a small community, like make a model of like a neighborhood or a town or something like that. And they did that, and they made this beautifully constructed model. That night, the teacher came in and put some sort of problem into that model. So I forget exactly what it was, but perhaps there was a fire at the one of the community buildings in the community, and then the kids had to come in and they saw what happened, and they had to figure out what happened, how could they fix it. So that's developmentally appropriate for a second grader, and then that changes as they get older, and the intricacies and how much how complicated the project is and how long it is based on as they get older.
That's amazing. Because from what you tell, I think it's like an anthropology class that I receive at college level, but they are happening.
Yes, and speaking of that, we had an anthropologist come into our sixth grade to talk about what she does, and then the sixth graders were set off on developing their own anthropological projects.
Okay.
And they were going over the school, interviewing people, and trying to put together, what they had found out.
Could you talk more about what the sixth graders do in their anthropology project?
So, as an example, I could get you the specific assignment, but what I was picking up just from what I was getting interviewed by students, one student every day was trying to figure out, what did people eat for lunch, and how did that vary from student to student. So he'd come over to the teachers, the faculty table every day and interview us. He'd look at other students. Students were in the halls writing things down. They were sort of dissecting all the parts of the middle school and WT community, and putting it together in a project that then they were sharing it with their class.
Okay, so what is that class called?
That's a social studies class.
Social studies. Okay, cool. And how do you evaluate students' performance in those kind of courses?
So we use a lot of rubrics, and then we use rubrics for content, rubrics for skills, and we also have used effort rubrics in middle school and tried to, and that's a really hard one to assess, but we've tried different formats. We actually, as a middle school faculty, created an effort rubric that we all tried last year, the year before, and sort of see, does this work for science? Does this work for math? Does this work for social studies on different projects? Trying to figure out how can we give as much feedback to the students, but then how can we assess, some of these things. It's not just like when they go to take a test and it's easy to assess. Working in a collaborative project is hard to assess.
Exactly.
So we just keep trying it from different angles, but trying to really identify what are the key skills we're looking for.
Okay, so that rubric is developed for middle schools?
So each teacher is that effort when I was talking was a middle school one.
Okay.
But each teacher, many of our teachers use rubrics for a lot of the different projects that they do that they make up themselves.
Okay, so the teachers have the responsibility to make the rubrics for their own courses.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have any kind of rubrics at hand now?
To show to you?
Yeah.
I could get some from the teachers and send them to you if you'd like.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. And what are the challenges these courses have across, for example, in lower school? What is the biggest challenge?
I could speak better to the middle school challenges, I think.
Okay.
So I think, and the upper school, I think it is assessing when the students are working in groups. And how to, and how to make sure that they're each pulling their weight, or that they're each, what are they each contributing, and what's that dynamic like. So I think that's one piece. I think the other piece is making sure you're assessing correctly what they know, and how are they, and do you have clear assessment of, you know, when they demonstrate skills, and how do you create an environment for them to demonstrate skills so you can assess and say, yes, you know, they understand what's going on, they are mastering the content. Something we've worked on as a whole school are developing competencies for each department.
Okay.
So then we can use those competencies, we can assess the competencies based on whether it's more traditional assessment in the class or whether it's more project-based.
Okay, that seems like a very common difficulty for any school implementing that kind of courses. And also for middle school students, because they are younger, so how do you make sure that they are actually learning something in that course, not just playing and handling?
So I think the projects have to be very carefully constructed.
Okay.
And a lot of our teachers will also build in other assessments along the way in a project.
Okay.
So not just the project piece, but in our middle school classes, we set learning targets for every day that the the teacher puts up in the beginning of the class. They are commonly referred to all throughout the class, and then a lot of our teachers will use exit tickets before the students leave class with a question or two based around what the learning target was.
Okay.
And sometimes those can be used as quizzes. Excuse me.
No problem. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I have a little cough. And sometimes they are just used for formative feedback for the teacher or for the student.
That's cool. And do you have any failure experience about a course that does not work that well?
We definitely have teachers whose projects have not worked well.
Okay.
But we actually very much support and encourage risk-taking by our faculty to try new things.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot to be learned from doing a project and having it not go well and figuring out how to improve it next time rather than just doing what you've always done because you think it works. We also provide a lot of professional development for our faculty.
Okay.
And one of the things we have are things called critical friends groups. You know what those are?
No.
Okay. So they are groups of faculty who get together once a month to share challenges and issues they're having in their classroom. And they get feedback from the other teachers. So it's a great place to bring a project that didn't work. It's a great place to get feedback. I tried this assessment, it's not working, and have the other experts, the other teachers in the room, give feedback. And it's a really valuable part of our program.
It's very important for teachers to gain that kind of support from schools. So I wonder if you can talk in more detail about how a particular course is failed. What are the factors? What are the triggers to the failures of that course?
I don't know if we have, I don't know we think in terms of full courses failing.
Just the project that doesn't...
I think every course is a work in project, work in process. And, as teachers are getting more familiar with the project-based learning, I think a lot of things get tripped up when it comes to assessing it. And the faculty may feel like, well, they were aiming for this, but wow, that's not where the students ended up going. Because a lot of project-based courses, it's very student-driven, so they end up going somewhere else. So I think it's the faculty weighing and balancing how much independence to give the students versus how much direct instruction to give them as well. And then I think, another area where faculty have found, where they've had a challenge is how very well structured and planned a lot of the project-based pieces have to be. Because I think the assumption is, I'm going to throw out a problem to this class and I'm going to just have them come up with the solution and build a project around it. And actually, I think for project-based learning and for a lot of what we're doing to work well, it has to be very well thought out and crafted by a teacher. And I think the old way of teaching was, the teacher felt like they had to come up with, the lesson plan and, all the details of the lecture or whatever it may be. And that was a lot of work. But if you do collaborative work or project-based work, you can just, it's a lot less planning. That is not the case at all. for project-based learning or for any of these hands-on experiences we're doing to work well, it's a lot of planning, just a different kind of planning on the teacher's part.
Okay, so do you require them to write out all their plannings
No.
as they go? Oh, okay.
We do not.
Okay, that's good. But do students receive the syllabus of what they are going to have throughout the semester through this project?
It's different. So in the at the upper school, a lot of those teachers do a pretty detailed syllabus, but not usually with every single project and explanation in it. In middle school, we have general overviews, but it's usually as they come, they get the details for each project.
Okay, cool. So do students rate or evaluate the courses that they take?
Yes.
Okay.
We do class in our middle school and upper school. We do students take class feedback surveys for every class.
Every class.
All of their main academic classes, yes, and
Okay.
some of the art, music, those two.
So I'm interested in the results. Is there any difference between the traditional lecture-based courses and the courses that involve more project-based elements?
So
Do students have a preference?
I think I can't say they prefer one over the other. Our students are very used to being very engaged in the classes, and I think they really gravitate towards classes where they're very hands-on. At the same time, though, they want to feel confident with the information that they're, and what they're learning. So I think they do rely on the teacher still to provide some of that. But they, it's so much different than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because the teacher is not the be-all, end-all of all the information anymore. You need to know something, you can know it. Pull something out of your phone out of your pocket, you can know it in 10 seconds. And now students can figure all that out on their own. They want the teacher who's really the guide, the facilitator, someone who's going to really help them to discover and think on the next step. So I think what I see in the survey results is that the students who feel most engaged, confident and engaged in class and feel like they're really hands-on are the classes that our students thrive in.
Okay. From my experience, for example, if you're conducting a class of 20 students, let's say, some are very engaged and some are not, especially in this project-based learning. Some people are doing great stuff and other people just feel that they are kind of out of place. So what are kind of support the teacher give to these kind of students? Or have you ever heard of voices from students that they don't think that they are doing well in the projects, or they think they are not learning anything from it?
I think that all of that happens.
Okay.
I think it's really the project-based pieces take a lot of one-on-one attention time from the teachers. And I think it's the teachers that are really dedicated to working with a small group, with one-on-one, where the projects are going to be most successful. And I think Greg Marks is an example of a teacher that's how his course is really organized. I mean, they're working on their projects and he's constantly checking in and guiding as they go through, and that's what makes them most successful.
I know that in the upper school there are also AP classes. So what about teachers' opinions towards project-based learning in upper school? Have you ever heard that teachers say that they don't like it? They think it's a waste of time or something?
Most of them don't like the AP classes.
Ah, really?
that is what we are finding. Because they are not fun to teach. They are, you're teaching by the College Board. And there's no chance we tend to hire teachers that are creative, that love to dive into a lot of this, and we have very few of the sort of old traditional teacher that just wants to get up there and lecture. And that's not, there are times for that, and there's times for direct instruction, but the AP courses are just a whole different approach than some of the other things we do. So I think it's a lot of time it's really hard for the teacher who's doing both. Because they tend to probably gravitate towards not the AP classes.
So may I think in that way that most teachers actually like to engage some project-based elements? Okay, that's cool.
Yes.
And what about parents? Because parents are an important stakeholders. Do they think that their children are actually learning in the project-based courses, and how do you convince them?
And that's a really good question. I think by having the students demonstrate what they know. Demonstrate what they know, and having the parents be able to see that. So we do a lot of public presentations of student work. We have an 8th grade Holocaust project, and we have a showcase evening where parents can come in, and they don't just see the student work, but the students are with their work, and then the evening is for parents to come up, get an overview of what the student did, and then ask them questions, and students respond.
Okay.
And really taking them sort of to a higher level in how much they know about what they've just spent a month learning, and our parents are always blown away by the level of engagement that our students have on their topics. So in the upper school, and I don't know if Greg talked about this, we have a huge STEM symposium. We went in the middle school too.
Okay.
Where all of these research projects that these students have been working on all year are displayed, and same thing, the students are there. We have got hundreds of people that come to go through, see the projects, hear the overview of what the students did, ask them questions, and it's an engaging evening where they're really demonstrating and showing, my God, they're creating and developing amazing things that you couldn't imagine a high schooler would do.
Okay. So do middle school and high school have the same similar kinds of activities of showcase?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I mean the upper school one is much bigger and they have more students, and but we do have similar things in middle school as well. And you know what? Even going down to lower school, we have opportunities. Our first graders study, neighborhoods and what in our sort of immediate community, and what all the types of buildings that make up a community, and then they build what we call our architectures convention. Build models, and then they invite parents to come in, and the parents walk around, and the students talk about their model and what role their ice cream store plays in the community, or things like that. So I think all across the board you'll see it.
That's cool. Do you have any other ways of showcase besides letting parents go and have a talk with the students? For example, do you let them to write documentation, publish online, or doing research reports or workshops?
Probably Greg or one of the upper school teachers could answer that better than I could.
Okay.
In the middle school, we have people that go to conferences and present what their students are doing, what they're doing. And in upper school, too. Actually, we have a lot. Greg has presented a lot. But we have, every year, a dozen teachers that go to different conferences and present the work they're doing. So that's one way. Internally, I publish a newsletter every week, and part of this newsletter, it's for all the faculty, because I'm also our dean of faculty, so I run all of the professional development. And one of the things I highlight each week is an amazing lesson or experience that teachers had in the classroom. So it's a lot of the project-based pieces, and so it gets publicized that way as too. But that's just for the RWT community, not even for parents.
Okay, so for what you just mentioned, for the publication within the WT community, do students write how the project's going on themselves, or do you report as a third party?
It's usually from the teacher's point of view, but I always ask the teachers. I always ask them when they just write me a paragraph to explain what they did, and I always say, what is the impact on student learning? And a lot of them will include quotes from students.
Okay, so basically students have kind of interview with teachers, and teachers organize
it depends, yeah, or sometimes they'll grab quotes that they hear while the project's going on to incorporate, probably not as much as a direct interview about something, but more anecdotal from what they experienced when the project was going on.
Okay, so from your experience of working in the middle school, and do middle school students actually make documentations while they are doing their projects?
Documentations of the reflection on it?
Maybe it's just documentation of the process, what kind of process I ran through, or...
So it depends on what the teacher has set up, and in a lot of projects we do that.
Okay.
There are built-in reflection times and documentation of process. Not in all of them, but when the teacher makes that part of their planning, then that's included as part of the process.
Could you tell something more in detail about what kind of form of documentation they're using?
So it's usually, I'm trying to think, we have some research projects, and this Holocaust project I mentioned, where there'll often be times for them to stop and reflect, and they may write a short essay that they give to their teacher, or something like that. They may do small group discussions to give each other feedback on how things are going in the process. It can take a lot of different forms. It's not always completely formal. Sometimes it's more informally. There's a lot of one-on-one meetings, conferencing that would go on with the teachers and the students where, the teacher would check in, how's it going, where are you in the process, what's working, what's not working. So that happens as well.
Okay, that's cool. What is the first time that WT considered introducing these project-based elements in courses?
It's been going on for a long time.
Long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it depends. It's really taken off in the last 5 to 7, 8 years. But even before that, so I started teaching here before. I've been here for 23 years, and I started teaching here before I was an administrator. And even in my history, social studies classes that I taught in the middle school, I was doing small, hands-on, project-based things, even though my course wasn't all project-based. So I think it's the nature of how we teach here, and it's evolved. But we've also always been a very much of a place that really engages the students in the learning process, not just filling them with information.
Okay. And for all the successful projects that have been conducted across all the courses, do teachers make documentations of what kind of planning they did before to make it successful and pass it down to other teachers?
Probably not.
Not? Okay.
That would be wonderful, but probably not.
Okay. So what is the reason of not doing that?
I think one of the things about teaching in an independent school is the freedom that our teachers have. And we do not mandate a lot of turning in lesson plans or other things like that. I think the place where that information gets shared is through those critical friends groups that I mentioned. Often also in our division meetings, so the upper school faculty will meet, the middle school faculty will meet, and we often have teachers present something that went really well in their class and something that's new and innovative, and they'll sort of walk through the process, just sharing with the rest of the faculty. So it's another way we share, but we don't formally document. Also, our teachers are really busy. And so to require them to, it'd be wonderful, but to require them to document everything they do would be a huge amount of time for them.
Yeah, got it. And how do this project the students do and make progress come into play when it comes to their college admissions or something like that?
Yeah, that I think that would be a better question for our upper school director or upper school college counselor. But a lot of them who take these courses like Greg's course or the Urban Research and Design course, I think it's what makes us stand out from a lot of other schools. And I think it's something they can speak to in interviews. I think it's something they can write a college essay about. And then a lot of the colleges really know a lot about our city as our campus program, which is the basis of it, really know a lot about that program too. And so I think they look for our students who have really taken advantage and really of that program as well.
So what do you think the middle school students are benefiting from this kind of projects learning through their process of moving to high school? Yeah,
so I think it's helping create this love of learning that is sort of our goal from the time they walk into our doors in pre-K or whenever they come through when they graduate, because it is engaging them. It's giving them a sense of responsibility in their learning. It's giving them a sense of independence. It's giving them a sense of fun. And I think that our students who have really had these different experiences in middle school, it's something they can really build on when they go to upper school. Another big piece of it is they're learning how to work collaboratively and what that means. And that's a really hard skill for a lot of students. So the more we give them that practice and deliberately teach them the collaboration skills, not just say, okay, you're in a group, you have to work together, but how do you work? What's your role? What's the other person's role? What's the difference between just collaborating and being in a group with someone? And so we try to teach that as well and to prepare them as they get older.
Yeah, I totally agree that creativity and collaborations, these are very important skills. And from our interview with Mr. Marks, he is really engaged in bringing the mastery transcript into evaluation. So what is the practice of mastery transcript in middle school? Do you kind of agree with this idea, get it implemented?
I think it's actually a very natural thing for middle school, and it's actually a place we can really try it and play around with it because we don't have the pressure of it going to be influencing college acceptance. So I think it's a very natural piece for middle school, the idea of creating a portfolio of work, constant reflection, having students be able to prove these competencies is really, what we I think, strive to do. We give grades in middle school because Winchester gives grades, and we're not at the point where we're ready to get rid of grades yet. Parental pressure, college pressure. But if you talk to most of our middle school faculty, they would not want to grade their students, and they would just rather really focus on this idea of this mastery approach and recognizing success and challenges in other ways rather than A, B, C.
Okay, so how is it currently being doing in the middle school, the mastery grading?
So we're not officially doing that. And most upper school courses aren't officially doing that. We are piloting and figuring out how we can incorporate it. So the only thing we've done in middle school so far, so I said we developed these competencies. This year, actually in middle and upper school, we are piloting assessments to align with the competencies. And so we are trying to focus it in that way to figure out, how that would eventually lead into a mastery transcript, but we're in very early stages.
Okay.
The mastery transcript doesn't exist yet. It's still in process. And so we are really saying, well, if we're going to go in that direction, we need to figure out how our assessment can align with the competencies in the classes we've developed.
Could you please give me a more detailed example of the innovations that one of the middle school courses are doing in evaluation towards the mastery?
So I think it is, so we have a science project.
Science project. That's interesting.
That's, they look at genetically modified organisms. And they did a very sort of traditional research. Here's a poster of my findings. Right? Here's a picture. Here's a description. And that teacher this year is really saying, how else can they demonstrate their knowledge that aligns with the competencies of that unit? Why are they studying genetically modified organisms? What are they? How does it impact the community? How does it impact people? And he is changing the way he assesses that project to have it align so the students are really demonstrating those skills differently than just content-based. I haven't seen the result yet. He's sharing it in our November meeting.
Okay,
but he's in process, and so that's sort of one example.
Okay, that's cool. So I have one concern for the example you just mentioned, like those science genetically modified stuff. Are they going to cost the students a lot of time? Do they actually have the time besides their normal curriculum? How do they set aside their time for doing those projects?
Oh, it is part of the curriculum.
It's okay.
It's built into our science curriculum. It's part of it's all these projects and everything they do are part of our curriculum.
Okay.
It is not extra.
So how many time do teachers expect their students to spend on projects like that?
They determine. We have 80-minute class periods in middle school, so they have significant time when they are with them, and they. A lot of the work we do is in school and in the classroom, and then there'll be additional homework. But we really, it's up to a teacher to sort of determine how many class periods they're going to spend on it, how much time they want students to work on it. But it's all paced by the teacher.
Okay. I noticed that you're in charge of recruiting teachers in WT, right? Yeah. Okay. So what are the kind of characteristics that you look for?
So we look for faculty that have a tremendous growth mindset, that are always figuring out how they can be a better teacher. And this our whole professional development system is based on this. But we want that for teachers that are brand new, and we want that for teachers who've been teaching for 30 years. Because if they always have the idea. And it's not that none of our teachers are good and we always have to try to make them improve. It's our great teachers can always learn something new, can always figure out, be very reflective in their practice and figure out what's the next thing, what area can I work on. I mean, we have very competent teachers, but any teacher that walks in the doors and says, I know exactly what I'm doing every day. Here are my lesson plans. I've used them for 10 years. They're just where they need to be. I don't have to change a thing. Is a problem for us because we want a teacher who's reading and learning and trying things and taking risks and collaborating with other teachers because our students are very different today than they were 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And those teachers may have been teaching 10, 20 years ago, and how do we meet the needs of the new students?
So do you want to recruit more teachers like Mr. Marks?
Yes, we do. I mean, we have teachers with a lot of different styles. His is one style that's fantastic. It does not work for everyone. So I think we have teachers. I think the thing that characterizes our teachers is that most of them use a variety of techniques in what they do, because they look for the best practice for what they're teaching when they're teaching it.
Okay.
Mr. Marks has a very distinct approach and style for that research. I assume you talked to him about his research science class, yeah?
Yes.
That his AP class is different. So, we have teachers that really, there is direct instruction in their class. There is project-based learning in their class. There is group work in their class. There are a lot of different elements to really support what they're doing at the moment.
Would you talk more about your experience with one teacher at WT that are really supportive, creative in conducting project-based learning?
Other than Greg Marks, I assume.
Yeah.
Let me see, who would be a good... So we have, in the middle school, I keep referencing this Holocaust project that we have, and it's taken various forms over the years. And so we have an English teacher who really has worked with our social studies teachers to sort of transform that project. And what it has developed into is our 8th grade goes to Washington, D.C. to visit the National Holocaust Museum. And then the Holocaust Museum is running a project, for several-year project, wanting students to contribute research to displays at the Holocaust Museum and to their body of information about what people in Pittsburgh knew at the time about what was going on during World War II and the Holocaust. What was the information coming through newspapers, things like that. So she has really sort of transformed what may have been a basic study of the Holocaust and some basic research about elements of it, and turned it into a project where these students are doing real authentic research, looking at archival newspapers, things like that, and then sort of constructing knowledge about what people in Pittsburgh in the 1940s knew about what was going on in the rest of the world. And then that gets contributed and is on display now at the Holocaust Museum in D.C. So it is giving our students this amazing real-world audience for a unit that in the past may have just been for, internal audience. And sort of really turning over to the students the direction where they go with a lot of that information they're finding.
How did you seek for this parentship with the museum?
She found it through her research and through talking with the museum, and so she initiated it.
So the teachers teachers who want to create those project-based learning actually will have to make the liaisons with different parties?
Yes. And then we also have a City as our campus director who helps with a lot of those connections too.
Okay.
And then so if we need an outside resource, which most of our classrooms do use outside resources, they'll set up sort of the logistics and help them find a partner to work with, help them find the outside organization, and then the teacher is able to use that to develop the projects.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. She connected to the Holocaust Museum on her own, but
that's amazing. We were talking on our way that we wish to send our children to WT.
I have 3 children that go here, and I feel very lucky.
Okay. Wow, that's cool. Okay, do you have any other question you want to ask?
No, not now.
Okay. That's amazing.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
so much.
Yeah, feel
Amanda.
free if you need any follow-up to let me know.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll walk you out because it's a little bit of a maze to get you back to the front door.
Okay, thank you for your help.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Good luck to you.
Oh, wait. Can I take a picture of you too?